Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today we sit down with a fellow listener of the show, a reader of the book, and an advocate of the skilled trades. Randy Niznick joins us today to talk with us about his journey through the trades and the military. He started at only 13 years old, helping his stepdad in the stamp and die factory. He was fascinated by the machines and what they could do. He then went into the Navy, where he was a Seabee, focusing on construction. It was there he moved through the ranks from construction to HVAC to security. After he got out of the service, he then jumped into facilities management and operations, which is what he's focused on today. So tune in to hear Randy's incredible journey and how it has led him towards a life of fulfillment and success by helping people and being on the receiving end of immense gratitude for doing so. Remember, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show is not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on the word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoy this episode, please take a second on whatever platform you're listening or watching to rate it, review it, and hopefully share it. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of Blue is the New White with Randy Niznick. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I have Randy Niznick here with us today. Randy and I connected on LinkedIn a little while ago. He's a listener of the show, so thank you for that, Randy, but finally able to actually bring him on as a guest because he's got some trades background that he wants to share with us today. So, Randy, welcome to the Blue is the New White podcast.
Hey, good afternoon, Josh. It is an absolute pleasure to be on your show. Appreciate everything you're doing to advocate and put out the great word about trades and all the various types of careers that are out there in the trades. And I will also add, I am also a purchaser of your book as well. So very enjoyable read. So great book. So cheap plug for Josh and his book. If you ain't got it yet, go buy it, go get it. Hot off the presses on Amazon.
I will take it, Randy. I will take it. Thank you. Everybody listen to Randy. Oh, man. No, that's great. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the support and for coming on and sharing your story in hopes of maybe inspiring some young folks out there to look elsewhere, look where they may not know a good career exists. So with that said, Randy, for those listeners that don't know who you are, why don't we get a little bit into your background and you tell us kind of where you come from and how you got to where you are today?
For sure. So I'll do my best to try to summarize, but I'm going to go back to my days of being about 13 years old. Anybody who works for OSHA, just cover your ears for about the first 10 minutes. So this is back in the so I worked for my stepdad. He worked in a press stampings tool and die plant. Press stampings tool and die plant. So he was the maintenance director, plant maintenance director. So blue collar family all the way. So I was raised. He also had a Dodge Polara. So I was raised under the hood, working on his Dodge Polara with him. He had Hemi 440 in there. But he basically introduced me to pipe fitting, so anybody who may not be familiar with tool and die press stampings. So these are just massive mechanical engineering wonders that basically take flat steel and stamp out different parts, right? So the company that I worked for, that I worked with they did a lot of work for Ford. So they actually made like fuel filter brackets for Ford vehicles. Now this is back in the 90s. So, but fuel filter brackets, et cetera, et cetera. So these massive presses, my stepdad would have me do the preventative maintenance, getting up there, cleaning out the grease, doing all this stuff. But even though the job was dirty, it was hot. Anybody who works in press stampings knows that those environments, there is no air conditioning. So I remember the plant, it would get upwards of 120 degrees in the plant.
And where was that?
Crazy.
Where was that, Randy? Was that Ohio?
That was in Ohio.
Okay.
That was in Ohio. And it was crazy because I got hooked on coffee at a very young age. And I remember just walking the plant, 120 degrees in the room, and I'm drinking hot coffee, right? It's just crazy to think about. But anyway, I remember my stepdad, one of the things of many lessons that he taught me, I remember him telling me, Randy, when you're up there, I know the job isn't the best. I know scraping grease is not the best, but I want you to really look at the engineering, really look at the mechanics of that press, and really start to understand how that ram operates, how everything kind of works together. And that was kind of the spark of always being curious. And I think those of us that work in the trades, next to the service aspect, which I think every single guest you've had on has talked about the service aspect, I think we all have that curiosity. We're always curious. And I think for anybody who's looking to get into the trades and is wondering, how can you be, I hate to use the word successful because everybody's definition of successful is different, but how can you really advance yourself in the trades? It's about being curious, right? And it really started with me working on those presses, scraping that grease, and my stepdad telling me, really look at it. And I did really start looking at it, and I was just bewildered, right? I'm like, man, this thing is pretty freaking awesome, right? And somebody sat behind a desk drawing this thing out and designing it, and here I am, cleaning it up. Anyway, so that was my beginning of the trades. And then we come from a Navy family. So my brother was in the Navy, my cousin was in the Navy, and my stepdad was in the Navy. So he basically said, hey, I would like to see you join the Navy, get out of Ohio, get out of this plant, go see the world, et cetera, et cetera. So I joined the Navy. Little did I know at the time that I was joining the Navy Seabees. So I have to put this out there. Navy Seabees is a very, very small group of the Navy. We are the construction force for the Navy. So I didn't know at the time. I just knew I was going to be a utilitiesman. I remember the job card saying plumbing, water treatment, air conditioning, boilers, pumps and compressors. And I remember saying, this is awesome. This is what I want to do in the Navy. And I remember I came home and I showed my stepdad the job card that you get when you first sign up, and explains the job and where the school is going to be. And there in the job card, kind of buried in there, was Seabees. And I remember my stepdad saying, holy crap, you're going to be a Seabee. Man, when I was in the Navy, everybody wanted to be a Seabee. And I'm like, what's a Seabee? He's like, they're the construction people in the Navy. He's like, you're not going to be going on ships. You're going to be doing construction. And I'm like, really? So anyway, that was that. That was kind of the continuation of my trades career. So I went to, so in the military, we have.
So wait, hold on. Before we go forward, yeah, I'm kind of curious, coincidentally curious, on a couple of things. So before you got to the Navy, when you were working on these presses, I love the lesson that your stepdad told you, which was, hey, look, I know this isn't fun. This may not be, you're a super passionate thing that you're doing right now, but really look at and appreciate the mechanics involved. And towards the end of that conversation, you had said that once you got to see all the gears and stuff, you were bewildered. And I'm curious, like what the one thing was, or one of the things that that fascinated you the most about specifically those machines.
And you're going back so many years.
No, that's okay.
I would say it was the simplicity of it all in some aspects. Well, I guess it wasn't so much. Let me backtrack. You know what was really fascinating to me? It wasn't so much the actual RAM and the press. So I know some of y'all may be wondering, what the heck are these people talking about? So, and it's a big machine that has a steel bed. The bottom bed is stationary. It doesn't move. and then the top bed goes up and down. And there's a big ram and with a big cam and a shaft that makes the thing go up and down. And depending on the size of these presses, some of them are stamping, 60 times a minute. Some of them are stamping like really, really fast. But what was fascinating to me was not so much that, it was the actual die. So it's so hard to explain. There's multi-stages. So there's a die that goes onto that bed, right? And that die basically takes flat stock steel, and through the different stamps, the different stages on that die, like one single die could have 10 different stamps, if you will, that basically takes that flat piece of steel, and as it moves through the die, each stamp shapes it until the very end, it produces a part. So take a fuel filter bracket, taking flat steel and then seeing it turn into a fuel filter bracket on the other side of the die. That to me really was like, this is crazy. And I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. So this was back in the day when we had vocational classes in high school. I know that that's not so much anymore. It's unfortunate. I was doing drafting, CAD, computer-aided drafting. And I remember the boss of that company, the owner of that company, found out that I was doing CAD in high school. He was like, "Hey, I want you to shadow our mechanical engineer once a week. Sit with him, and he's going to show you how he designs these dies that makes these parts." Now, I was just a kid, man. I was mind blown. And you got to remember, this is before computer-aided drafting. This is like this was old school. This guy was there with the old tilt-up drafting table, pencil, straight edge. You know what I mean? No computers at all.
Yeah.
And he was showing me how he kind of drew these things. And that's what I ended up doing. I took an old single hit die. So that is basically one stamp. It makes a part, right? It's not the multi. I took a single stamp die for my, I had to do a competition. I was invited to a local competition with all the different high schools to do this. It was me and I think 2 other people from our class were selected. So I had to take that single hit die, and I had to actually, I used that for my drawing for the competition. I didn't win, but hey, it was fun. But that really taught me a little bit about mechanical engineering and design, which I actually had a strong interest in it. But again, my stepdad was like, and I know people that are in manufacturing, and I actually still keep in touch with some people from Dymatic, so they're probably going to be like, "Come on, man, Dymatic's a great company." But he was just like, I just want you to get out of this plant. He's like, I want you to go see the world. I want you to go join the Navy, because I was actually looking at the owner of the plant at the time was like, "I'll put you into an apprenticeship with us, and you can shadow this mechanical engineer, and maybe one day you'll be a mechanical engineer." Mm-hmm. So anyway, I totally got off topic a little bit. But anyway,
that's all right. That's
that was that
when that happens. No, that's great. I love that story, and I think for what it's worth too, having a mechanical engineer like that kind of take you under his wing and for at least a little bit, right, and show you how he came up with this kind of stuff. That's so important in this industry. We hear all the time. Especially with, and listen, nothing against white collar jobs or anything like that, right? But this show's about blue collar, so I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of these jobs that people complain of getting thrown right into the mix. Very very little training, or the training that they do get is just boring or depressing or whatever. And with the trades, even in what you experienced there, it's much of a mentor-mentee type, relationship there. So, I think that it's important to mention what you just did, is that there are people out there who are willing to transfer their knowledge to the next generation in order to, keep this lineage of tradespeople alive.
For sure.
Cool.
And, in all actuality, my first mentor was my stepdad.
Yeah.
He was the one that taught me pipe fitting. I remember putting in air compressor lines, because there was also assembly. So the assembly line had a bunch of air, it was a huge compressed air system because they had all their pneumatic tools that they used when they worked on the assembly line. So, he taught me about the air compressor and how that works and all that stuff, right? So he was my stepdad. He was also my first mentor as far as the trades are concerned.
Oh, that's really cool. All right, let's get back on track. Let's fast forward again. So you were in the Navy. You showed your stepdad your job card. He was excited that you were in the Seabees. And what happens next?
Yeah, so I joined the Navy, did my thing, went to Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and then went into the construction battalions. I ended up doing 23 years total service. So as you progress in the military, you kind of move away from the trades and you move into frontline management. So by the end of it all, I wasn't really turning wrenches anymore, right? At that time, after you do 23 years, you're pretty much first line management, first line supervision. So, but through the course of that career, I was blessed with some pretty cool schooling and pretty cool unique duties. So the first one was, my initial school, which is like the initial trade school where you basically no different than much of the trade schools out here. They just give you the foundation. You do a little brazing, you do a little soldering, you build a little tiny house because it was plumbing, right? So we learned cast iron. Actually, back in those days, something that was pretty cool is we still poured lead joints. So I learned how to pour lead joints and do the oakum and all that. Don't see that too much anymore. So anyway, did that. Went to my construction battalions, and then about 5 years into my career, I got picked up for advanced HVAC and R school. So that was taught by the Air Force. So one thing that happens a lot in the military is we have joint service schools. So just because you're in the Navy, that doesn't mean you may not attend a school that's taught by the Army or by the Navy. It's just what we do. So that HVAC school was taught by the Air Force. So I went to Shepherd Air Force Base in Texas. And I think, if I remember right, I was in the long school. So it was 6 months long, if I remember. And I just basically was thrown into HVAC and R. And then after that, I went to London, England, and I was an HVAC critical technician for some Navy data centers, for lack of a better word, that were in London, England. They are now decommissioned, so I can talk about it. So I'm not giving away any secrets. But there was some Navy, they call them communication centers, but really essentially they're data centers. So I had a chiller plant, cooling towers on the roof. I had 450-ton Dunham Bush chillers, and then just all the auxiliary stuff. And then, of course, I had a bunch of split DX units and all that. So one thing I will say, I've always been on the commercial HVAC stuff. I never had, even though I had the training, I never had the opportunity to really work with refrigeration or deep freezers, like multi-evap systems, like what you find in Sam's Club and Costco, which I know that's kind of your all's bread and butter. Mm-hmm. Never had a chance to really get into the refrigeration stuff. Always was curious about it, but I never really had a chance to turn wrenches on that. So anyway, did that, and then and I just kind of advanced. And then my last 5 years in the military, I was on special programs again with Department of State Diplomatic Security, where I went to schooling for technical security systems, access control, CCTV, vehicle barrier systems, the pop-up barriers that basically if the truck is trying to ram the embassy, these pop-up barriers, they pop up in like a split second and the truck is completely annihilated before it has a chance to hit the embassy. Stuff like that. Explosion detection, all that fun stuff. So I did that and then, expanded my trades knowledge once again. So to summarize, Josh, I'm one of those tradespeople that have kind of danced in many different areas. I'm not a master of any for the most part. A lot of my time was spent with HVAC. That really is where most of my knowledge sits. But then the technical security systems, the, induction loops, right? In the ground induction loops and learning about how that stuff works and all that stuff.
So I gotta ask. So first off, thank you for your service. I've had the utmost respect for anybody who serves in our military. So thank you. And secondly, I'm curious. You've been in the trades then for a long time. Sounds like pretty much all through high school. You had your hands in the trades. When you were in the service, your hands were in the trades. So, I mean, if you had to pick one thing about trades work in general, whether it be, those presses or pipe fitting or HVAC, or the security systems, what do you think is the most important skill that the trades teach you, whether that be technically or character-wise?
Humbleness.
What's that?
The reason why I say that is because humbleness.
Humbleness.
It teaches you to be humble.
Yeah.
Because our trade is ever changing. There is nobody that can say they know everything when it comes to trades. There's no way in heck you can know everything, especially now. Maybe before technology really got implemented, maybe there would be a point where you could say, I pretty much know HVAC. But with technology, building management systems, smart buildings, you might even see it with the equipment you work on, right? I don't know, but maybe they have sensors on there that sends a signal to an app to somebody's phone that says this equipment isn't running correctly.
Yeah.
All of that stuff now that has been added on, when we talk about HVAC, fundamentals, know your refrigeration cycle, right? High side, low side, know the main components, evap, condenser, compressor, metering device. But now you have all this other stuff that's been piled on top of that you have to know. And it's constantly changing and it's constantly evolving. So I think anybody who has that arrogant approach of I know everything, I just don't feel that's what it is anymore. I think most of us in the trades are humble enough to know when we don't know, right? And admit it.
Yeah.
I've never seen this before. I've never seen this type of control on a part before. I need to go back and dig into this before I really muck something up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just being humble, man. Of you can't possibly know it all.
That's such a great answer. And to your point, it's kind of like there's a self-correcting behavior, right? Because I was in the field for a long time too, and when you get really good at something, anything really, not just trade work, but really anything, there is a sense of confidence that washes over you. And if you're not careful, if you don't keep that in check, right, that can turn into an arrogance. And but the trades have a habit of humbling you real quick, because the second that you think you know everything and then you miss something or something doesn't go right, you know right away usually, and it'll make you take a step back, right? And it does. It
sure.
keeps you humble. So I love that answer. And I think that there's a lot to be said about that. That's a really great quality, and I think that would probably qualify as one of my fundamentals for success too. No matter how you define it, the ability to remain humble is of the utmost importance.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So, very good. So, what was next then after you got out of the service? Where did you go from there?
Facilities. Well, I kind of dance around. So anybody that knows anybody from the military knows that I prefer to call it career transformation. I don't like transition. So for those that may not know, when a military service member comes out of service and goes into the civilian world, they call it military transition. I don't like the word transition because it basically just means you're moving from A to B. There's not necessarily going to be any change required. You just got to move from A to B. And that is definitely not the case. And I will say this for anybody who's looking to switch careers. When you're looking to switch careers, it's not just transitioning. It's just not, okay, I'm dancing in the left lane, now I'm going to dance in the right lane. It always requires some kind of a change. So I prefer, and I got this, oh my gosh, now her name is going to escape me and I feel bad. But I got this from an article that a lady wrote way back in like 2012, where she talked about career transformation. And that's where I got it from. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what it is. And she talked about like the 8 steps that you're going to go through. So anyway, career transformation. I totally forgot where I was going with that, Josh. Totally lost my train of thought.
It happens. Believe me, that happens to me daily. But that's okay. That's okay. I was just asking, what was next for you after the military?
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. That's right. So yeah, so I was doing. When I first got out, I worked for a awesome company, very small company. They were only at about 200 employees. I was a field service manager for an automated gate system, security systems for intermodal yards. So that was pretty awesome, actually. I got to work around trains and trucks. I mean, how cool is that? And I had field service technicians that I managed. So to back up, like I said, in the military, as you progress in your career, you move into management. So when I actually did a stint at the Naval Academy, I forgot to mention, and when I was at the Naval Academy, I was a facility manager for Bancroft Hall, which is the world's largest single dormitory in the world. It's massive, and it's got everything, medical, dental, everything. It's like a little city. I was facility operations. So that was my introduction into like facilities management. So I knew when I did that tour at the Naval Academy that when I got out of the service, I wanted to get into facilities management. Little did I know that you can't just rest on your laurels. I really thought that Naval Academy FM tour of duty was going to be my shoe-in. Like, I really thought people were just going to be pounding the doors and say, come join us as an FM. It's just not that easy. So to my brothers and sisters that are out there military-wise, don't rest on your laurels. It takes work. You still have to network. You still have to meet people, tell people your story, and then let things evolve. So that's kind of what happened. My first job was working intermodal. It wasn't facilities management. It was working in field service, but I loved it. And then I had an opportunity to be a custodial manager for a huge public school system. And so I did that for a short period of time. I will not digress into that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows when you get into something where you're like, I'm not feeling it. That's what happened, right? So it's just one of those things that was a career choice that I made, but it probably wasn't the wisest career choice. And then I finally got picked up for a facility management position. And that's kind of where I've been ever since, but I've grown in my career since then. So with JLL, I started off as an operations manager, and now I'm running kind of account operations for a nationwide account.
Oh, so that is a hell of a journey that you've been through, Randy. But that's great. I mean, and honestly, I mean, you've heard the show, right? So you've heard me talk to people about where the trades have been able to take them, and how they ended up where they are today, because of the trades. And I just love hearing these types of stories, right? Because it's such an, I don't want to say unconventional path, right? But everybody's journey is different. So it's fascinating to hear yet another way that you can end up doing something that you love, and it sounds like facility management is something that you truly enjoy.
For sure. Yep, for sure. And now I work critical environments, so data centers, right? So not going to lie, this ain't no 9-to-5 job, right? Data centers, it's all about uptime. It's 24/7 around the clock. I know for you, I'm sure you service restaurant equipment. I mean, it's really kind of the same gig with you. I mean, you guys are critical environments too, if you think about it. I mean, if a restaurant freezer goes down and they lose all of their stock, they're not going to be making food that day. Not to mention the loss that they just took from their food that went spoiled. So, they're going to be looking at you or your text. Hey, when are you going to have my freezer back? When are you going to have your freezer back up? I think that's something that maybe we could talk to a little bit, is the soft skills, right?
Yeah.
So I remember when I was out there in the trades, going back to London, England, I would get the call, 1 or 2 in the morning. Hey, chillers are down. The room is getting hot. you need to come in or else we're going to have to start shutting computers down. And once you start, once IT folks start talking about shutting down computers, all hell is breaking loose at that point. And I remember going in and, I will admit, my soft skills were probably not the best in my younger days. So I remember going in and having these senior military people. It was interesting because when I was in London, England, even though I was in the military, it was civilian clothes duty for me. So most of the people didn't even know I was in the Navy. They thought I was a civilian. So let's just say I would play that to my favor sometimes. So anyway, nonetheless, I remember going in and, having a chief petty officer or a naval officer just breathing down my neck, what's going on? What's going on? When are you going to have my cooling restored? What's going on? And I remember just getting so frustrated because you're like, if you would just leave me alone for 30 minutes, give me time to see what's happening. Don't be on me. But you can't, of course, say that to the customers. But, those soft skills, right? Being able to keep cool when the pressure is on. I think that's very important in the trades.
Yeah, that is important.
Even if you take it through. Yeah.
I was just going to say that that's an incredibly important skill. And I feel like almost a lost art these days, because it applies to way more than just the trades, right? I mean, the ability to keep cool under pressure in any aspect of life can only play to your advantage. As they say, emotion clouds judgment. And I'm a firm believer of that. And so if you can perform well with your back against the wall, that's going to do very, very well for you throughout your career.
Yep. And, and that's something honestly, Josh, I don't know if I'm going to offend anybody. I don't even know if we use this term anymore, but the green techs, right? Those newbies that are still learning the trades and then they get to a site that has a tough customer or an over-demanding customer, they're still learning themselves, right? So they might not have that full confidence of that seasoned tech. And then you have a customer breathing down their neck. Just as you said, the emotions take over. They start just freaking out. So it's so important. And I don't know how you could really teach that,
You can't. You just have to experience it.
Experience, the confidence will come,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, and that's good. I'm really glad that you brought up soft skills, and here's the thing, Randy, we talk a lot on this show about why anybody would want to be in the trades. We talk a lot about soft skills and, the humbleness and the ability to perform with your back against the wall. And I wonder sometimes, what do we think that means to the younger generation? Do you think that they hear that and what do you think they make of it?
Ooh. That is a loaded question.
Oh, I know.
I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know if I want to go there. I'll be honest. I mean, there's just so much happening in the world right now with, I work in technology. I love technology, but people are completely, people can't work with people anymore face to face. It's all through computer screens.
Seems like it, huh?
So when you finally get somebody face to face and they're back against the wall, face to face, if they've never experienced that before, I don't know.
They shut down. I mean, I've seen it. Yeah. Right. I know exactly what you're talking about, and we don't have to go there. Let's rephrase the question into what do you think appeals to today's youth, or what could appeal to today's youth about the trades?
The technology aspect of it.
Yeah. I think
right. That's the part that's missing. We don't talk enough about the technology aspect. Now, look, let's be honest. There's still some equipment that's dinosaur age, but if you're blessed enough to maybe get a gig at supporting a Class A office building that does have all the bells and whistles, the technology now is flipping amazing. What's happening with technology? So if you can learn the tech, really kind of speaks to the technology aspect of it, I think that's what will attract people. I mean, at the end of the day, going back to the refrigeration theory, at the end of the day, we're moving heat. That's air conditioning. When I talk to my techs and I give kind of talk to people about HVAC, I always say it's just moving heat and it's just a big pump. Now, we know, you and I know there's a lot more to it than that, but that's really what it is. We're moving heat.
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me, I always found that interesting, but I was kind of raised under the hood of a car. But I think the technology piece, like I said, not to belabor that point, but I think we need to just emphasize the technology piece. Everything is becoming technology driven. And if you can correlate that to what we do in the trades, I think we may attract more of the youth.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think, being able to relate what they've grown up with in the technology aspect of things to an industry that the perception is that it's an old school industry that doesn't or hasn't typically adopted this type of technology. There's a barrier of entry there. So if we can break down that barrier and let people know, hey, this is the type of technology now that's being used in HVAC or refrigeration or even, pipe fitting or security, especially, I mean, there's just, it's unbelievable now. Even in my field, Randy, in restaurants and stuff, we've got remote monitors now that we can, remotely monitor all the temperatures in all the buildings, whether it be in the walk-ins or the ACs or whatnot. It'll tell you, all the air pressures. It'll tell you all the cycle information. It'll tell you everything, and it's really wild, the dashboards and things like that you can build and the alerts and, how it all works together and talks to one another. And, it's way different than it was, 25, 30 years ago in the field. Yeah. It's a lot more accessible and, more appealing, I think, to today's youth if people would actually talk about it, So
there you go.
And so we were kind of talking, before the show about how, on this podcast, we like to talk about the blue collar careers and stuff like that, but also of careers that people may not know exist that could provide a wonderful path for them. And you had mentioned something that you wanted to bring up.
For sure. Yeah. So not only do we need tradespeople, we know this, but there's a bit of a niche out there that unless you're in the Beltway, DC, Maryland, Virginia, you may not hear a lot about it. And that's the cleared trades. So people who can obtain clearance secret level, top secret level, TSSCI level. When I worked with Department of State DMAC Security, we had contractors that would come from the states who had, top secret clearances. These were electricians, these were plumbers, these were HVAC people that would do work in the classified areas of embassies all over the world. So if you like to travel and see the world, if you like that thought and idea, and if you've kept your nose clean and you don't have anything in your background that would deter you from getting a clearance, I'm telling you that there is a huge demand for cleared trades, skilled tradespeople, plumbing, basically mechanical, electrical plumbing, and actually construction too, right? Obviously we build what they refer to as skiffs. This isn't no secret squirrel stuff. You can look up skiff online. Everybody knows what a skiff is. It's where you have classified conversations in the conference room. We need people that can build that stuff. And that type of construction obviously is not like a house because you got to make sure that people cannot listen in. They can't eavesdrop through electronic means, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all this crazy stuff. There's a whole other world out there that people don't even fully understand it's even out there. And that's the cleared side of working in the trades.
That's fascinating.
And so for if there's any young people that listen to this podcast, keep your darn nose clean. That's when I was recruiting, when I needed to get cleared people for when I was with that special program, State Department, there's always skeletons in the closet that would come out, right? You're just like, man, I would love to have you. You're brilliant, but you're not going to get the clearance. I can't bring you on.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest frustration we had when we were trying to find cleared tradespeople is just finding people that can get the clearance.
So is that something?
So frustrating.
Is that something, Randy? That like, how do you go about doing that? I mean, you got to keep your nose clean. Obviously, you can't get yourself into any trouble. But is there something that you can like physically apply for to be on this list, or is it just, how does that even work?
No, it's just you just most of the job announcements will say you need to be able to obtain a clearance at whatever level. So when you see that, and each level is different on how stringent it is. So
I see.
So there's no real there's no list. I mean, there's different. I will say a buddy of mine. He runs classifiedjobs.com or something like that. I can't remember, but if you look up classified jobs, he's a recruiter that basically just headhunts for for cleared people. But even with that, most of the time it's IT stuff. I don't see too much trades type work. So really it's just a matter of finding these niche companies that do the federal contract work that are in it. So it's kind of secret squirrely now that I think about it, because these companies are usually small. They're usually small, maybe 100, 200 employees, and they just launch people out on these different projects. And basically they deploy for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months to support a project. And then they come back to home base and then, hey, what you got for me next? Maybe have a 3 month stand down or 6 month stand down and then go back out.
Wow. That's fascinating. And that's something that I never even thought about too, which is why I love having, so many different guests on the show, to kind of reveal that information, right? Because if there's a big demand for tradespeople, there's a just gigantic demand for tradespeople who can get security clearance like that. And I think a big draw, I've talked about this, I think, in my book and with a few other guests that I've had on the show. But I think, there are a lot of people out there that love to travel, that want to see the world, and this could be, a best of both worlds kind of situation. You learn this skill, you keep your nose clean, you can get this clearance, and you can be sent to places beyond your wildest imagination,
Yep, exactly. Like when I was with State Department, we were posted in Germany, and me and my team went all over Europe, doing various technical security jobs. I would go to, Brussels for 2 weeks, installing some security system or upgrading a camera system or something. And then I would come back, and then maybe there was some locksmith job, because part of the training was we got to be certified high security locksmiths, locksmithing is an interesting trade. You don't hear too many people talk about, but I tell you, locksmithing, high security locksmithing, dealing with the high security locks, Medico, the Simplex, the Kabamaz. I'm probably talking Greek to you, but and maybe to most of your audience, but those are your high security locks. Those people that are certified to work with those high security locks, you have them for bank vaults, you have them in data centers. So there's another kind of I don't know if I would say it's niche necessarily, but locksmithing is a pretty cool job.
Well, it's one of those that I think if it falls under the same perception, right? People are like, oh, locksmith, that doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound like a real actual career.
Right.
And I know some locksmiths. I know some high security locksmiths. And let me tell you something. These guys they don't want for much. Let's just put it that way. They are in very high demand, and they can definitely charge their worth. So, all right, cool. Well, just a couple more questions for you, Randy. So, one thing I'm curious about, is obviously this show is about trying to get the trades a little bit more known, revealing the opportunities. What would you say to a young person today about why they should consider the trades as a career path?
Bigger picture, the youth today is definitely concerned and has a deep passion for the environment, and how can we kind of protect Mother Earth. Being in the trades, this is kind of big picture, right? You know, a lot of people can't really think abstract, but really being in the trades, you do contribute to that in some aspect, right? Making sure air conditioning systems are working optimally and the most efficient, and they're not burning energy by having dirty air filters, which is making that motor work 20 times harder to push air because there's a restriction because the air filter is dirty. And it's, running twice as many hours because it doesn't have the capacity like it would if everything was running freely without that restriction. That is consuming energy. And energy right now is a big topic. So, that type of thing, just thinking abstract about, kind of goes back to where we started. Scraping grease off a press. Maybe, I know that usually when you first get into the HVAC, commercial HVAC, you do end up just doing the PMs, right? Changing belts, changing filters. And maybe people are just like, why is this exciting to me? Well, that's why it could be exciting if you think about it in the right way. If you over tighten your belts, that motor has to work that much harder. It's drawing that much more energy. Just stuff like that. Just keeping the sustainability side of things in the mind, I think, is something that would possibly attract the younger generation. Because, like you said, I know even with my son, who's 19, he's definitely a lot more, what's the word I'm thinking of? Just a lot more attentive to
energy conscious
recycling. And yeah, there you go. Or even just recycling and stuff like that. He's always yelling at me, "Dad, why are you throwing the aluminum can in the trash?"
You know what? I think that's the first time on this show. I think, Randy, I believe you're guest like 122 or 123 on this show, something like that. And that's the first time that anyone has taken that specific abstract stance and view on, what could be a benefit of working in the trades. And I think that's awesome. Being able to use that bigger picture as to what you're contributing to, right? Protecting the environment and, having control over sustainability, basically, taking that into your own hands as a trade person. I think that is, that's huge. So great answer to that question. So the last question I have for you, if you've listened to the show, you know exactly what I'm going to ask, but the show's about success, right? About how we can achieve success, whatever that definition is to us. So I'm curious for you, Randy, what is your definition of success, and how are the trades, or how have the trades helped you to achieve it?
Yeah, it's interesting timing. So in November, I turned 50. And as these things go, our definition of success really changes as we grow older and, quote, wiser, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
I think success is really just, are you truly enjoying what you do, and are you passionate about it? And that'll come through with everything. If you're not happy in your job, you're going to be a miserable old person. And when you go to a client site, you may not have a nice smile. You may be a little bit unapproachable. So I think really just enjoying what you do. Look, there's challenges in every job. There's days I wake up and I'm like, why am I in this industry? Especially the data center environment, or anybody. Let's be honest. Anybody who works in trades, let's be honest. I always say this. Anybody who follows me hears me say this all the time. Nothing ever breaks at noon on a Monday. It's always the most inopportune time. So I think it's just, but you just gotta love what you do. I know it sounds cliche and cheesy, but for me, it's the service side of it. And I know that's probably, I think every guest you've had on has talked to the service side of things. But really is, and as a person who has lived, through military service, supporting the foreign service with the Department of State stuff, services, is where it is. And that's what I enjoy most, is just when I get those calls and being able to help navigate and get things course corrected. And at the end of the day, the person's like, thank you. Like, you just took a weight off my shoulders. And it could be let's talk about residential, right? It could be as simple as, hey, my air conditioner ain't working. You go out and you fix the air conditioner to put it in the middle of the summer and it's 100 degrees, and inside the house it's 130, and they have a newborn baby. And it's first time parents, newborn baby, air conditioning is that. Stress level is through the roof.
Yeah.
You can go there, fix their air conditioner. Like, you cannot put into words how that makes one feel.
Yeah.
Right? You can't, man. You can't. When you see that mom, first time mom, thank you. That's probably the most sincere thank you you'd probably ever get, man.
Yeah. No, that's you're so right. And that answer never gets old, by the way, because it's so impactful, and it's so true. And I find it amazing, that I have had so many people on the show, say that they genuinely value, the gratitude from others, and the service aspect. And so it's refreshing. It's a reminder every day, and every time I do one of these podcasts of why I do what I do, and it really is it's amazing. So wonderful industry, Randy. You've got an incredible journey, an inspiring story, and I think that what you talked about here today will really resonate with a lot of my listeners. So I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. Before we go, is there any place that people can find you if they have any questions?
Yeah, you can find me. So really, I'm not huge social media. I'm not Twitter or any of that stuff. So LinkedIn, that's pretty much where I'm at. You look me up, Randall Niznick on LinkedIn. I will forewarn you, if you do connect with me on LinkedIn, I do a lot of veteran transition type support stuff. So a lot of what I talk to is helping my fellow sisters and brothers with their, I'm sorry, I said that nasty word, transition, with their career transformation from military to corporate world, with a splash of trades and a splash of data center profession mixed in. But I really do try to help my sisters and brothers navigate this crazy thing we call corporate America.
Well, good. I'm glad that somebody's doing it. So thank you. Honestly, thank you, Randy, for that, and for coming on the show today and sharing your story with our audience.
Thank you for the opportunity, Jess. It was great.
Absolutely. Take care. Okay.